Hi, and welcome to Untethered with Jen Szpigiel, the podcast that's here to help you free yourself from the crap that's holding you back so you can claim the life you're meant to live. I'm your host, Jen, and in this episode, we are going to talk about having the audacity to own your personal magic. Let's go. Hi, friend, it's Jen. Today on the podcast, we have the amazing treat of having Jen from Becoming Iconic here with us on the podcast. So Jen is an amazing human being. She has been building what she calls babies and businesses for 18 years. She is a certified health coach, life coach, and business and lifestyle mentor. And her magic in this world is to call people up to rise into their power, to rise into their magic, to rise into their greatest potential as a leader, as a human, as a mentor, whatever it is that you have been called here to do. And she is here on this podcast today to call you up into that. So you are going to love this episode. Get ready for her to lay it to you straight in her full authenticity and truth, because it's so beautiful. And there are so many things that she says that all of us need to hear, and then need to hear again and need to hear again. And that's why she is a mentor. It's why she does what she does. You're absolutely going to love everything she has to say, and maybe get a little called out on a couple of things. I'm going to be honest with you. She speaks some truth, and it's so good. It's so good. I cannot wait to introduce to you the beautiful Jen at Becoming Iconic. Hi, Jen.
Hi, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited.
My listeners are going to laugh because they're like, do you only invite Jens onto this podcast? And I'm like, I'm sorry, they're awesome.
Well, we are. I mean, it's just one of those things that I think we all need to admit to. We can own it. We are.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. So I know that you have so much goodness to share with this audience in particular. We touched base for even just a second right before I hit record, and we're talking about achievers and some of these just unnecessary pressures that we put on ourselves as human beings. So we're totally going to dive into that. And I would love to hear, you have a leadership podcast, you have a mastermind, you really are helping call women up into the world, into leadership, helping us to step into our power. Mm-hmm. And how did you become interested in this? Like, why is this something? What has been your journey to this point that got you to where you're at?
Yeah. Well, it sounds so cliche, but it is the truth. And I can't neglect the truth or the part of the story. I was a little girl, and I remember craving to feel confident. I remember being really young. I remember exactly where I was. I was in rain boots walking down this little path. I lived in the country, and it was this little tiny little creek, and being so fascinated with the ice that was starting to get really thin, and I could break it with my boots, and just really being really reflective. And I remember in that moment on that walk, just really sort of, I guess I was praying, but not aware at that time of what I was doing, and just really thinking, like, I want to feel confident. I want to have great friendships. I want to be someone that is loving and compassionate, but also can hold herself. And I think maybe at that time, it was a tender time in my young, youthful age of starting to understand friendships and understand how sometimes those friendships aren't always what you thought they were going to be. And in that moment, I guess it was a divine moment. I heard, this is your life's journey, is to find this for yourself, but also to give this to other women. And it was so crystal clear. So I guess it's a divine appointment. It feels that way. And it was interesting, though, how it sort of manifested, because I thought it was going to be through fashion. I went to school for fashion thinking, that's it. I'm going to help women dress in clothes that empower them, where they feel sexy and confident. And that was really what I thought I was going to do. But that industry ate me for breakfast, because I was still on my own journey of finding out who I was and standing in my power and feeling confident in my own body and skin. So it wasn't the right time, nor was it the right outlet. I still love fashion, but it really started to mold itself. And I got into entrepreneurship in the beauty industry and wellness industry. And that's where I started. And that was really what cultivated where I am today. I built something on complete desire and really wanting to be all that I could be. I was a mom of two at that time. I had left my corporate career. I had a really big marketing career. I loved it. But when I had those babies, I felt like as a woman, I had to choose them or my job. I chose them for obvious reasons, but I really missed being who I was. So when I went into entrepreneurship and started to generate this success and really start to thrive, I noticed my posture, my confidence, the conviction in who I was changed. And I just happened to naturally, organically attract people who wanted to do the same thing, who were like, I feel like you could help me. I'm this mom, or I am this woman in this corporate job that is so unfulfilling, or whatever their situation was. They said, we've watched you transform and build something so beautiful. Could you help us do the same? And so business coaching kind of took on its role. And that's 17 years ago. For 17 years, I've been building babies and building businesses. And it is my life's work to pour belief into women, even when they don't have it themselves yet. But I get to be that person that pours it into them until they find their groove, they find their swagger, they find the journey or the path that they're meant to take. And it is a really gorgeous way of waking up every day. That's for sure.
Oh my gosh. And what a gift. What a huge gift, because there are so many people who don't have that belief or can't find that belief. It's hidden somewhere and they don't have it. And for that to be your gift that you offer the world, how cool that you discovered it so young too. Was that, did you know in that moment, or was it like a reflection even later, like in your teen years or 20s, looking back and remembering that moment? I'm so curious. Did that little girl, like you were, because I ask this because when I was in high school, there's certain people, they just seem to be so confident. And I didn't understand it. I was like, how can they be so confident? I have no belief in myself at all whatsoever. So I'm just curious how you carried yourself through those years.
Well, I had a really tough go as a young woman. I didn't have a great high school experience. I had lots of fun, but it wasn't a great experience. And what I noticed in my life, it's interesting you asked this question. I've never actually spoken about this on a podcast, so it's pretty special. But what I've noticed in my life is I reacted a lot to circumstance or situations. I didn't always sit with discernment. I didn't always sit with my own integrity or authenticity. I was very, very good at molding and shifting myself for approval. And that was a common theme in my life. So to answer your question, that seed was there. And I always had the knowing that I was meant to love women. And I knew that I wanted to pour into them. But I believe my life's journey was waiting for me to learn how to do that for myself first. And that was a really important, long, treacherous, painful in some points journey. And so when I was able to realize how much I sought outward validation, that my entire confidence and belief in self was dependent upon clients saying, oh my goodness, you are the best person that's ever come into my life, or because of you, or, my husband saying you look beautiful, or my parents saying you're doing a great job, or my kids being loving and mommy. Like I searched for that constantly to feel those feelings of love and appreciation and validation and purpose. And it was not too long ago, I would say probably as early as 4 or 5 years ago, where I really started to see this trend. And I got really tired in living this way. And I had a mentor who called me out on it. It was a really vulnerable, not very fun moment when someone calls you out, because it's just like you feel totally naked and revealed. But our very first call together, and I knew I hired her because she was going to pull power out of me. I knew it. That was the specific reason why I did. And our very first call, I remember thinking, I'm going to really impress her. Like, I'm just going to, show up. And within minutes, she said to me, you're in a performative persona. And I understand many of us are, but I cannot coach you the way I want to coach you when you're coming to me not as the total person that you are. And so what I want you to do is I want to call this call to completion, and I want you to go do some work. And she gave me tools like human design. There was a few other things I can't remember right off the bat, but there were a few things to tap into to better understand myself. And I remember getting off that call and being like, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed, because when you are in a performative persona, you want to do that to impress somebody. So when they see you and what's going on, that can feel really tender. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I needed somebody to shake me, to rattle me out of this habitual pattern that I was in of like, what do you think of me? What do you think of me? Am I impressing you? Into what if I'm impressive enough? And what if just the sheer presence of me is impressive enough? And that was not easy, because when you don't have that confidence, that can feel like a big, bold statement. And it's easy to pretend we feel that way, but to be that way, that was a practice, and that took time.
Oh my gosh. I just got chills when you said, what if I am impressive enough? Just simply as I am, as the human who I am, showing up today in this very moment. Like, that is just goosebumps, because there's just so much truth to that. And thank you so much for answering this question with such truth and vulnerability, and really sharing exactly your journey and talking about that moment with that. I know that kind of moment with a coach when it's like, oh, I am naked in front of the class. Mm-hmm. Everybody's seeing it. I don't know if it was one-on-one, but I've had it in a group setting where it's like, I am standing up here completely naked and sweating, and everybody's watching this moment.
Yes.
And I know that authenticity is one of your greatest values. And so that's something that you really hold true to. And you've just shown up in that way with us today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And authenticity is a very overused word but it's so potent, because it's the pursuit of ourselves. I mean, none of us are ever 100% authentic. We're just not. And that's okay. There's a level of forgiveness and grace that comes with that, of just being able to catch ourselves and pull ourselves back into our authentic power. And again, I think that's our life practice. I don't think there's a destination. I don't believe there's any island out there where there's a bunch of people like, we found it. We're authentic 100% of the time. We do not care what people think of us. We are living our best lives. I think that's a little naive to even expect of ourselves. But what I can say is, when we're pursuing that, which means to me, we're doing the healing, we're doing the inner work, we're being curious with ourselves, we're being more loving and attentive to ourselves, more time alone, really asking, is the integrity behind the thing I'm about to do, or am I doing something because I think I should, or am I doing something to prove? Those things are the tools and the skills to support us to showing up as authentically as we possibly can, as we're only doing the best we can with what we know in this very moment. And then tomorrow I will know better and I will do better, because that's what we get to do every single day of our lives. It's the fun part.
And it removes a little bit of pressure too, doesn't it? So I think there is pressure around being authentic, like, oh, being my authentic self. And I even have these conversations with my own husband, because he'll be like, well, just be yourself, be yourself. And I'm like, that feels like there's a lot of pressure in being myself, because then I have to know exactly who myself is. So what you've said here about it being a pursuit, it's a process. It's an untethering and unraveling, if it were, this podcast called Untethered, that's what we talk about a lot. So I really love the way that you framed that up. It's just like, I can breathe.
Well, thank you. And I feel like this is such a relief, because most people are looking for their purpose. Like, I got to find my purpose, or I'm looking for my purpose, or my business is my purpose. And I think there's a level of purpose in it. But for me, the purpose that we all share, and I don't think there's an exclusion to this rule, is the becoming of ourselves, is finding the truth, the seed, the essence, the core of who we are and designed to be. And our businesses are a reflection, a contribution of that. I don't believe my purpose in life is to be a mentor. I think that's the way I contribute to the world, by the pursuit of becoming all that I can be. Because when I'm fostering myself and learning and growing and building businesses, I can then turn around and offer a hand and say, hey, I know a way. I figured something out here. Let me give you my hindsight, so it's your foresight. So I think that is also a big relief, and a relief of pressure, because I think so many people think my business is my purpose, and we just white knuckle our businesses so much. And again, what we're asking it to do is to prove to us that it's our purpose. And it's like, that's not my job. Or if our business could only have lips and be able to share back to us, like, would you just give me some space? Would you just let me breathe? Would you let me show you? But you're constantly at me, asking me to prove myself. Think about it like a marriage. One of my most popular posts, it's pinned on the top of my social media, is what if you treated your business like the greatest love affair of your life? Because if you're constantly asking it to prove itself, like think of yourself in a marriage or a partnership, and you're saying to your partner, prove to me how much you love me. Prove to me you're never going to leave. Or what if you're constantly swooning over other people and lusting over other, let's say men in this circumstance? I'm looking at other men all the time, like, why can't you be more like him? Why can't you look more like him? And we're doing like this to our business. Like, we're like, why can't you be successful like this girl over here? Why can't we be growing like this person over here? I mean, if you think about it like this, the heart-centered business we would have, the relationship we would gain with our businesses would be so extraordinary. And that's how I grow my business. I literally look at it as a fantastic, beautiful love affair. Like, like this movie that could be written like a notebook, where I dance with it and I treat it respectfully. And when I do, guess what happens? It respects me right back. So I know I kind of went on a riff there, but I think that's a really important message for people, because they just put so much pressure upon the business to validate and prove to them that they are worthy or in their purpose. Your purpose, friend, is to find out who you are and the essence and core of who you are and let that shine bright, period.
Well, you just summed up the entire message of this whole podcast. At the end, I say, let your glittery unicorn magic shine. That's what I call your purpose. That's what I call your magic, that inner being. And it is just letting go of all of these things. And you're just, oh man, your words are poetry. You're just getting down to the core of it. I love what you said. Like, your business, it doesn't need to impress anyone. It's simply a reflection of your becoming.
Yeah. It's a contribution. How are you contributing? How are you impacting the world? We make so much of the business, like especially entrepreneurship and careers, so much about ourselves. Like, especially right now, I mean, online, it's just polluted with women slapping their income up there. And it's so twisted and toxic. And it's like, that's not the point. For me in mentorship, I'll speak for myself. If I did this simply to make money, the core and the seed of everything I do is so full of ego. The mentorship, to be a mentor, means you have a heart to serve others. Otherwise, don't be a mentor. But you have to have that heart that genuinely wants to serve somebody, to give somebody, to pour over somebody. And that's when you start to have success, because people feel that there's results, it's genuine. And then the income and revenue and all those beautiful things that we want to acquire happen. But if we come into mentorship or any business, I'm just picking that because it's mine. Yeah. And we think, I want to become rich. I want to be a wealthy woman. If that's the core message that everything is coming through, it will never, ever be as fulfilling and joyful as it could be. And it mostly will have probably this beautiful lineup. You'll make the money, but to sustain it will be a very difficult, treacherous journey. And I can say that because I've worked with countless clients who have chased the income and not the contribution and impact. And it's not one or the other. You don't have to choose, but I'm just saying, let the root of everything you do be the impact. How can I make a difference today? Because that's part of our purpose too on this planet, is to make a difference and to let people feel our love and our compassion and our empathy and our presence and our attention. Like, these things are so, so important.
Yeah, that's why you have that magic inside of you, was to come here and to sprinkle it around and make more magic. So that's why you have, and yours is just so bright. And this really goes back. I would love to share the reason I asked you that question also about childhood, is because I very recently came back to this moment in childhood when I realized the games I loved to play as a kid were not with Barbies and a lot of the things other kids love to do. I loved to serve. I loved to pretend to cut hair. I loved to do my sister's hair. My friend had a bar in her basement. My favorite thing in the world was playing bar. And at my grandma's house, I played bar at her house too. Like, I loved to serve. And I went through this big period of my life where I really got outside of that. And I was just like searching around and doing all the things that you mentioned earlier. Just like, it's just like so, gut wrenching trying to figure all this out. And the truth is that you stop trying to figure it out and you just come home to yourself. And now that I came back to that moment of myself as a child serving, and that's what I love to do. And so it's like, if I'm not in a space of service, I'm not living my greatest joy. And so love that moment for you as a child in those little rain boots, kicking through that thin ice, like you just came back to that, like, this is what matters to me. And it's like, what if we could all go back to that moment in childhood when it just really clicks for us? Like, this is what matters to me. This is why I'm here. It's what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And what if we saw people a little bit more clearly? What if we spent a little more time looking up than looking down at our phones? What if we also expected that by giving impact, we were going to be impacted? Because I think sometimes with servant leadership, for example, or service, there is this little bit of like give, where we take ourselves out of the equation. This is where I can sort of falter, if we want to call it that, right? Where it's like, I take myself out of being able to receive because I just genuinely love to give. But there's something really beautiful in service and in anything in life. This service could mean in a relationship. I mean, we're talking business, but even in a marriage, when we learn to receive and accept and also give, that's the magic. That's where you feel that abundance, because it is so beautiful to be able to receive it and accept it, because what that does is fill us back up to pour from that overflow back out to others. So that's something just to be cautious about as we have this discussion too, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, yes, that's me. I just want to serve people. So just know you can serve and not be a martyr. And you can serve and not be a victim. And you can serve and feel very abundant and very full and very seen and very celebrated. Those things get to be your experience as much as it is the person you are giving it to.
Thank you so much for calling that out. So important. In order to be our most truest, abundant self, like we also have to receive, and it's receiving in all areas of your life. And it often starts with receiving your own love. Your own love before you can even accept the love of your partner fully. It's loving yourself, which comes back to that moment that you spoke about at the very beginning. It's like, it really comes back to you. Like, what are you allowing yourself to receive even from yourself? Ah, so beautiful. So if someone is looking to, people on this podcast who listen to this podcast, it is career women, also business women, and a lot of times it's like, I feel this like something more, like I'm feeling called to more. There's something else for me in the world. And yet I feel like I just get burned out. Like I just go, and I achieve. And so, what do you say to those people who are in that spot? Because I'm sure you've mentored people who feel like they're there. Like, I've just been like striving and I feel like there's more, but I just can't get there. I just keep burning out.
Yeah. And that's a real thing, that fear of burnout. Because if you've had burnout before, you never, ever, ever want to have it again, because it takes so long to recover from. And most of us have been raised in hustle culture, which taught us that you do not come up for air. You do not take your foot off the gas. And if you do, someone will come right by and whiz by and beat you, or you're not as great of a leader as this person over there. I remember even being taught, like, if you go on vacation, make sure you connect with people all the time. Like, you can't I just literally was taught you can't take a day off. So I've hit burnout more than once, and it is very depleting. And it's scary because when you do get on the other side of rest and rejuvenation, like, I cannot go back there. So I want to answer that question with just honoring that piece, because if you've hit burnout, I understand, because I've been there more than once, how that feels, and it's scary territory. I just would love to offer that because you've hit burnout before and you've recovered from it, you're likely on the other side of it wiser. You probably have more boundaries. Maybe there's opportunity for more. I get that, but you're a different person for that experience. So there's a level of trust that gets to come in where you start to trust yourself just a little bit more. Because I lived through that and because I recovered from that, I have different things that I have set up in my life in terms of boundaries or expectations, or I do these practices for self-care, whatever that may be. So trust yourself. That's my first piece of advice. and trust that you're not going to allow yourself to get there again. And if you do, guess what? You know how to recover because you've been through it and you can do it again. I don't want you to, but there's that trust factor of like, worst case scenario, I give this a try and I start to see myself going into burnout. I know the indicators, the clues and cues, and I'm going to like hold myself to make sure that I don't go over the line. The other thing that you mentioned is pivoting. I think that's really probably what they're feeling is like, I feel like I'm ready to pivot or I'm ready to do more, add more to my life. And that's my sweet spot. It's one of my favorite things to work on with clients because most of us share that. Most of us, I'm going to speak to women primarily. Most of us as women start to realize how we have really sold ourselves short, how we've bought into narratives like you have to sacrifice a piece of yourself in order to be an exceptional mom. Or if you want to be, an exceptional mom, you're not going to be able to have that career. Like you're going to have to make that choice. I spoke about that earlier in the podcast and I lived that out. Like I actually left my career that I loved to be home with my children because I thought as a woman, I couldn't do both well. And I was told I wouldn't be able to do both well. And I made a choice. It was the right choice. I love my kids. I've been I can't say stay-at-home mom. I'm a working mom, but I've been a working mom for 17 years. I now have 4 kids. And what I can say to you is I'm here to eradicate this for women. I am really exhausted. And I'm going to be honest, ladies, a little bored of this. We know better now. We know better. We know we can be exceptional moms. We know we can have intimate relationships. We know we can do multiple things in our business and our career. We know this because there's examples everywhere you look. I get to be an example. It's such a big blessing. I am a living example that you can do multiple things really, really well and be fulfilled and be well and rested and healthy, all the things. So get out of your own way. Start to play with capacity. And then you will realize we have infinite capacity. It wasn't like we were created and saying, okay, Jen, you have the capacity to do all these things, but you, Jenless, like not you. Okay. You're over here. You're just going to be this small version over here. And I know that you're not that. I'm just using this as an example. I know you're big and audacious and bold and doing big things. So this is just an example, but that's not how we were created. I was not favored. You were not favored over somebody else. We are all favored. It's just this willingness to try. And try was given such a bad reputation. Oh, you can't try. You either will or you won't. But trying is the first step. And then comes the commitment, and then comes the proof, and then comes the belief. But the try has to come first. And what if you tried? What if you had your career and you tried to do that thing on the side, whether it's an Etsy shop or an online business or working for another company, all these things that seem so scary and so big. But if you tried it, you will then be able to make an educated decision for yourself as this is for me or if it's not for me. If you never try, you will never know. And what I see through clients is the ones who don't try, the ones who are like so afraid of like the potential of something going wrong. It leads into resentment. It leads into a frustrated, if I can be so bold, an angry version 5 years down the road because you realize that time passed anyways. And this time passed, I could have, or if I had, what would have happened or where would I be? And that is not a good feeling. I would say that's actually worse than burnout. Regret is a way worse feeling because you can never get that time back. So stop taking it for granted and stop thinking that you only have so much to give. It's infinite. I trust me, I promise. It's not perfect though, but it is infinite.
Thank you. Taking us to church, and we need to hear it. Thank you. I think just you being so willing to be so bold and to share that and to say it with such conviction. And it feels like truth. It feels like truth in my body when I hear you say it. And why not try? It's something I talk about with my clients all the time because it's through the experience. Like yes. We always think of feedback. Like feedback has this kind of like connotation, like, oh, I'm going to get some feedback from some people. What about the feedback from yourself of trying, of going out there, giving it a shot, seeing how it feels to you? What does it feel like to me to go apply for a job? What does it feel like to me to put an offer out there into the world? Because your experience matters. Like if we're going back to that you come first idea, like your experience matters because your clients aren't going to be happy if you're not happy with what you're putting out there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's a call to action, and it's a call to see what you're made of, because we hear the saying, like the biggest regret at the end of somebody's life is all the things that they never brought to life. And that has really stuck with me. When I heard that, I hear it all the time, but I think people hear it and it's just like goes in one ear out the other. We think we have all this time. We think, oh, next year, or when my kids are older, or when my husband's more supportive, or like whatever we're saying. And it's just so sad to me. And I think I say this often in my podcast, like I want to skid to the end of my life. Like I want to be like that car in like a movie where it's like, and kind of slides in sideways. That's how I want to go. I don't want to go all rested and rejuvenated and like I got lots of sleep. That's not how this girl wants to leave this lifetime. I want sleep and I want to be rested. I want to be healthy. Don't get me wrong, but I want to skid to the end. And it reminds me, you just said something of a point in my journey. I decided I was going to be a life and health coach. And I went and got certified. Now, life coach certification was very much a beautiful thing for me because of helping women and being able to support them in all areas of their life and business. But I tried the health coaching and just wanted to give this for anybody who wants to try something. I tried it and it was not for me. And I remember like just 2 months into working with clients thinking, I do not want to talk to them about how many times they're chewing their food. Like this is not lighting me up. That's not my jam and not what I want to discuss. There's people who do a great job at that, but it's not my soul's like calling. And I had to pivot again there, but nothing happened. But what it did do is set me on the right course by trying that and attempting that. So again, it's like if I've never done that, I wouldn't have gone down the life coaching path, which should bring me down to what I'm doing now, which is this full circle, sort of holistic approach to life and business for women.
And what it didn't lead you to is resentment and regret, because that's not what you're living today. Yeah. Oh, such a beautiful path. So what do you see are some of the top challenges that people are coming to you with? You know, you mostly work with women in business. Yeah. I mean, what are some of those top things that you see people coming to you struggling with?
3 things. Number 1 is time. I'm so busy. How am I going to do anything more? Like I am so busy. And they'll even say that when they're wanting to work with me and come into a program. They're like, I don't know, I'm just so busy. And it's unfortunate because I think that is something that is robbing so many people. And so I want to talk about that for a second because I have a really powerful thing to say. And it's not an easy statement to hear, but we need to hear it. I feel like this is ego in action. I think when we say I'm busy, the subliminal message behind that is like, I am busier than you. You do not understand how busy I am. I mean, ultimately, if we want to break it down and peel back the layers, that's what somebody's saying because they're looking to be validated for all the things they're holding in their life. So I will never say the word busy. I always say I have a really full day or my life is really full. So I changed that word because it is so overused. And as a matter of fact, it's like, how are you? I'm busy. Like it's just a knee-jerk reaction response. And we've fallen into this seduction of busy. And I say all the time, I have the same amount of time as Oprah. I have the same amount of time as you. It's what we do with it that counts. And most people are not, in fact, that busy. They're really, really interested in Netflix series and drinking too much wine at night and eating chips and scrolling on the internet and scrolling on Instagram. And those things are eating away precious time to live a beautiful, abundant life. So that's number 1 is they come to me with that, but they don't leave with that. Because even if we don't work together, I'm always like, just can you look at it a little differently? So that's the number 1. It's like, how, and are you using that as an excuse to not see capacity? Second thing is money. I have a lot of people right now who want to make money. And I'm going to be so bold as like, probably I'm using this word. I don't love the word need, but need to make money. It's a requirement. Like the cost of living has changed. And so it's expected for us to make more. So most people going forward will have more than one income stream per person in their home. That's just going to be the way life is. So we can fight that, or we can get on top of it and build something. So it's interesting how money can be the very reason why to do something new, but holds people back as their biggest excuse, pardon me, of why not. Right? They'll say things like, well, I can't invest in a business because I have no money. I need to make money. So it's interesting. So the very thing you want is more income, and you know you need to do this to create more income, but you're using that very thing as the excuse not to do it. So it's interesting. So money would be number 2. And number 3 would be, I think, a rattle of belief. And this is not gender specific. This is for all. We've been through a lot. And I would suggest most, if not all of us, have some form of PTSD, some form. And what I've noticed in the world, I don't participate in news. I don't even know what's going on. And maybe that's not a great thing, but it's my choice because I'm very protective of my energy. But I hear people talking about, recession, and I'm thinking, so we've jumped from one scary, fearful thing to now another. We've just transferred that energy over to something else to be afraid of. And I feel like I just see it like everybody's shifting into fear constantly. And I understand it because I have those same tinges in my belly and worries as well. I'm a mom of 4 and I'm the sole income earner for our home. My husband's home full time to support around the house. So I understand how that fear can come to the surface, but what we do about it can be drastically different. And I say to people all the time, you're not a tree. You can move. You are not a product of the circumstance unless you allow it to be. Like, you can make a different choice and a different decision. And I know that's easier said than done. I understand we have all been through a lot, and we really all have, but that's something we all share. That's not a separator. That's a coming together. And so we get to be each other's champions, and we get to understand we're all a little fragile, but be a leader through that. Be a leader for yourself, be a leader for your family, be a leader for your children that have also gone through this and have not processed this the way an adult has. Be a leader for the corporation you work for or for the business you're building. Stand up a little straighter and stop waiting for the feeling to come first. Most people are like, well, when I feel ready, or when I'm more confident, or when I have more clients, or when I get that pay raise in my job, then I will. But all those things are waiting for you to step forward first. And when you do, guess what happens? More clients come in the door, more revenue comes in the door, more confidence starts to come over your body, embody it. So that would be the 3 things and these are big things. This is not small discussion. This is big discussion, but hopefully I'm at least revealing it and bringing it to the surface for someone just to take a look of like, where do you stand on each of those 3 things? And are you sort of stuck in any of those? And can you move yourself through it in some way, shape, or form?
Thank you so much. I think everybody can relate to all of those things, right? Time, money, belief, fear. And there's no creativity that happens in a fear space. Creativity happens in movement, like in shifting and going and joy. Like, that's where creativity happens. So when we're living in that fear space, and like you said, we've all got your empathy for human beings. It's no wonder that you do what you do, because you just feel so deeply and you understand people, and it's so beautiful. What is just one step? And I know it's deep work, and this is what you do, and it's why you do it. Is there one step? Say somebody finds themselves in this like excuse of time, or maybe money, whichever one, like what is like one little thing that they can do?
That's a great question. I'm trying to find one thing. There's 2 things that are coming up.
Or 2.
Okay, so I'm going to start with this one because this is the first one that popped into my head. The first one is finding an accountability partner. But here's the warning. You're not going to find the best friend, the sister, the husband, the person who's going to be like, it's okay. You're doing your best. Don't worry so much. That's not an accountability person. And most of us choose those people because they make us feel better in that moment. I'm talking about a mentor or someone that you can trust who's going to say, hey, Jen, you know what? You told me you wanted to really grow this podcast. You told me you wanted to have more guests and that you wanted to create more time and space to promote it. And I hear you kind of saying those things that you said you didn't want to say or to believe anymore. I just wanted to reveal that to you, that I'm noticing you're going back into that behavior or pattern in a loving way. Those people are like a gold mine in your life, because they will be your truth tellers in times where we're falling back into those untruths, those lies that we have believed for so long. Those patterns are really hard to break. And I'll be honest with you, we don't always totally break them. Okay. There's always a little baby toe still left in there, and it can come back to the surface. So to have someone like a mentor or someone that you can trust that's going to love you when they give you honest feedback, because you also don't want someone who's going to make you feel bad or judge you. It's not that. It's in a loving way, hold you accountable to the things you're going to say. That's the first thing, because sometimes we need that person, that champion. And the second thing that came up for me was just try to do something different. Just one thing. Maybe it's get up a half an hour earlier and start listening to podcasts. Maybe it is go for a walk after dinner by yourself and have more time by yourself to start to feel the clarity, to start to hear the answers. Maybe it is getting a different circle. Maybe it's starting to invite people over to your home and having discussions and conversations again. Like, what is something you can invite into your life that will expand you, offer perspective, offer a change? And in those little tiny, like minute things that we're doing, they can offer a big shift, a big transformation. So I think those two things are the first steps. There's many, but those would be the first two that come up.
It's so generous of you to offer both of those things. And they're amazing. Those are amazing steps. I mean, get yourself a mentor, a loving mentor. And here's why that matters. And I'm just going to reiterate what you said in a slightly different way to really drill this one home because of how much it matters. Yeah. We will look for people who will fight for our limitations because it keeps us comfy. Mm-hmm. So if you are finding somebody and it's so great to have those friends in your life too, and your spouse, those people who are going to reassure that everything's okay. We need those people too. And when you're really wanting to move forward on something, when you're really I have a big thing that I want to contribute to this world, or I want to move forward on something, you need someone who is going to lovingly call you out when you are saying yes to your limitations, because we'll keep doing it, that baby toe. It's just going to keep creeping back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. That's beautiful. You have a gorgeous way of summarizing. I really appreciate that, because I hope that these are really landing for people. And I think the two of us are doing a good job of summarizing that. So thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah, you're saying it in a beautiful way too. And it's just I'm just let's drill that one home.
It's so good. You have a really beautiful way. Yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, I really appreciate, this is what podcasts are for, is a conversation. And I feel like first of all, you're very good at that. But also I think this is really beneficial to people listening, because your words and the way you articulate it is just slightly different than what I'm saying. And I think that is really beautiful, because I hope it just has a resonance for people and they're really feeling called. I would hope that there's this feeling of wanting to rip open or unleash or untether themselves so that they can do something different. If you want a different result, you're going to have to do something different. I would love to have a very fit physique. If I could just press a button, eat chips and pizza, have a glass of wine every night, and live my best life and look a certain way, that would be my best life. Okay.
Heck yeah.
But it's not the reality. I've got to do something different to have that result. Doesn't mean I have to deprive. It just means I got to make different changes, or different, decisions and changes in my day to day in order to invite what I desire in. So it's just that simple, but not that simple.
Mm-hmm. So true. You said something, thank you, first of all, also for your very kind words. And I love podcasting for the same reason, for the ability to have just these super deep, really important conversations about the stuff that matters. And you said something about leadership that has been on my heart lately, because in coaching programs, we have pods often, smaller pods of group, if you have a really big coaching program. And so often I will hear from people who say, nobody's showing up to my pod. What can I do about my pod? Can you switch me into this different pod? And what I say to people is, if there's nobody who's showing up, you're being called to be the leader. If you care, and I think this doesn't just apply to this pod, this is in life. If you care about something and you're not seeing anybody else showing up for it, hello, you're the leader. You're the leader. I know I'm reverting back to something earlier, and I wanted to hit on that nugget because you said it also in such a beautiful way. And it could be that you, hello, are being called up to leadership, and whatever that thing is for you that you care so much about.
That's a good point. We always have the opportunity to lead. We're meant to lead. We really are. There's times too we're meant to follow, for sure. It's that dance. And I think that's the beautiful part of life, is that dance, but it is the awareness of knowing when you're being asked to lead. I call it, I have this really cool term I love teaching on, and it's called peaceful confidence. And it's very clear. It's an image. So I'm going to share the story because maybe someone will grasp onto it. And it's how I define leadership, especially for women. So I know a lot of women who would say leadership is like bold, courageous, loud action. And you'll see them walking in the room where it's like, I'm here. And they kind of declare themselves, and they're looking for people to like turn and say hi. And it's that outward validation again. And to me, that's not necessarily strong leadership. There's a level of lack of confidence. I think you know what I mean. We're lacking a bit of confidence there if we need people to recognize us and to applaud us and to, turn around and be like, oh, she's here. So I don't think that's exquisite leadership. There's some level of room for improvement. I also don't think leadership is a woman who walks into the room and takes the cheap seat, sits at the back in the corner so that the other women can have the good seats, and sits down and like looks down at her phone and waits for someone to approach her before she feels comfortable, or, just sits there meek and mild. I think we're really good at that as women, by the way. That is not leadership. And that is not humility either. I think we get humility really messed up with what that actually means, and we take it to such an extreme. So that's not it either. So where's the middle ground? And I think of her, she's very vivid in my mind. She walks into the room and her presence speaks for itself. She has this presence that exudes this confidence, but love and care for others. Like, she doesn't say a word, but when she walks in, those people, you've seen them, and you just like, you turn your head and you're like, who's that? And she sits down at a good seat, not the best seat, not the worst seat, at a great seat. And I see her cross her leg and kind of rest her arm on the back of the chair and lean back with this welcoming posture of, I'm here. I'd love to chat, and she's available, and she's smiling, and she's vibrant, and she's radiant. And to me, that's exquisite leadership. There's something about that speaks to me, because I call that peaceful confidence. And when we're scrambling, which sounds like that person was like, nobody's coming. When we're scrambling, we're not in that peaceful confidence. It's like, where's the opportunity right now? You said it perfectly. I don't even need to reiterate. It's like, how do you get to lead right now? You're being asked to be the leader. What can you do to serve this situation or make this situation more beautiful and abundant and joyful for the people around? And even if you're the only person in the room, how do you get to lead it for yourself? Nobody showed up. It's just you. What are you going to do when nobody's looking? That matters.
Mm-hmm. It sure does matter. I love this idea of peaceful confidence. And you painted such a beautiful picture of exactly what that is. And it's so feminine and it's so powerful, that idea of being open and here for it. Like, I'm here for it. And it's so, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing everything. This time went so fast, I'm sure, for everybody who's listening. It's such a great conversation, and you've shared so much. Thank you for being so generous. I have one last question for you that I ask every podcast guest. Where do you see the magic in the world?
I see the magic with women right now. I think it's so incredibly fulfilling and also a massive responsibility to be a woman right now. This is the first generation where we have had this level of opportunity and access, where we have the internet and social media, all these platforms to support us, where we are starting to see what we're capable of and give ourselves full permission and to be multifaceted and multi-passionate. I just think it is so incredible to be a woman. And we have so much magic. We are the magic. I firmly believe the divine feminine is the most magical place and space. It's so tapped in, and it does change the world. And I feel like that has been really foggy for a really long time, maybe even severed for a really long time. And I feel like we're coming up. It's like we've been treading water. Maybe our head's been going under, but we're like getting our footing and getting above water and catching the breath and filling our lungs. And so we have the opportunity, but we also have the responsibility right now. And it's not okay to keep saying the things that worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like, I'm a mom now. What am I going to do? Or when my kids grow up, or my husband doesn't support me, or I don't have enough money, or if only like that just doesn't work for us anymore. It did, or did it? We're being called to do something pretty big. And if we could own our personal magic, if we could have that audacity, it makes me teary-eyed. Like, I think, what could we do to change the world? We all think that we need income or money or wealth to change the world. I actually heard somebody on the internet preach this. It broke my heart the other day when she said, I'm tired of people teaching about impact over income because you need income because impact is expensive. That was the message. And it broke my heart because I thought, that's so not true. Impact is free, and impact is about you having the audacity and the brave responsibility every single day to get up, get dressed, and give your best dang show you ever had. Better than yesterday, not as good as tomorrow, but the best you can do right now. And when we do that, I promise, I firmly believe it, the world will be such a magnificent, gorgeous, beautiful place for all of us. But it's the person listening, responsibility to own their magic first. It's not just mine. It's not just yours. And so it's time for us all to take radical responsibility in that.
Thank you so much for sharing your magic with the world and with us today. That's mic drop. Thank you, Jen, so much. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you? How could they work with you?
Oh, thank you. That's really generous of you to offer that. So thank you so much. Becoming Iconic is pretty easy to find. So on all social media platforms, that's what it is. And the website's becomingiconic.co.co. That's where my podcast is housed, or it's on all podcast platforms, Becoming Iconic. I mean, again, it's pretty simple. The one thing I'd love to offer your audience, if they're interested, is I have this magazine. It was birthed last year when I lost my social media. I'm in the midst of rebuilding. And in rebuilding, I also birthed some things that were on my heart and spirit for a really long time that I had neglected or put up on the shelf and had lots of dust collected. And so this magazine is completely free. It's digital. And think of it like Forbes meets Vogue. I really thrive in giving solid business advice and life advice, but I also want to spark like really beautiful lifestyle and different places to go and things to experience. So that's available as well. It also has its own Instagram, Becoming Iconic Magazine, but those would be the greatest places to come find me and hang out.
Amazing. Yes, everyone, the links are in the show notes. You can go check Jen out and Becoming Iconic and go check out that magazine. It's beautiful. I mean, everything that you create is so beautiful. All right, y'all. Was that not just, if you're a business owner, I know you got like all of the goodness out of that conversation. And if you're not a business owner, if you're in a career, if you're a mom, if you're whatever situation you're in life, there was so much there because we're all leaders, as Jen said, and we're all being called forward to share our magic with this world, to contribute in some way, to lead in your unique and beautiful way. And that becoming of who you are, that becoming of that authentic person, like wrapping back to that beginning of the conversation, it is a process. It's your process. And you get to reflect the beauty of that process out into the world. And it's an amazing journey. So I'm so grateful that you heard this podcast. And I hope you just took some really amazing things away from yourself out of this conversation, whatever that thing might be. Thank you so much for listening. If there was some nugget in this podcast that really struck you, I encourage you to share it with a friend who might need to hear it. Go on social media, share it there. Tag myself, Untethered Jen, on Instagram. Tag Jen at Becoming Iconic, and tag us both, and we'll reshare your post. Thank you so much for listening. You just keep shining your magical unicorn light out there for all to see. I'll see you next time.